the summer of 1862, the American Civil War is in its second year. The embattled Confederacy, despite a crushing tide of Northern victories, is experiencing a miraculous resurgence. In the spring, the Union Army was at the gates of Richmond. Much of the Carolina coast had fallen to the north, and in the west, Union armies had taken New Orleans and were marching deeper into Tennessee and down the Mississippi River. The South is facing its darkest hour. Yet, like a thunderbolt, General Thomas Stonewall Jackson executes one of the most stunning campaigns in military history, winning victory after victory and driving the North from the Shenandoah Valley. In feverish haste, Jackson's Valley Army is moving to support the newly appointed General Robert E. Lee's army. Together, Confederate forces unleash a torrent of counterattacks and flanking movements, driving Union General George B. McClellan's army from the seemingly inevitable conquest of Richmond into a flight down the York-James Peninsula and saving Richmond. The North was stunned, and the South was ecstatic with these stunning reverses, elevating both General Lee and Jackson from soldiers into legends. Yet these two audacious leaders knew that despite their successes, they intuitively understood the strategic initiative, and they must act. President Abraham Lincoln has created a new army and placed it under the command of General John Pope. This army is a conglomerate of forces that were defeated by Jackson in the Valley Campaign. This army in Northern Virginia poses a real threat, one in which, if joined by McClellan's army, will have an almost 3-1 numerical superiority over Lee's army. Lee must act quickly and try to destroy Pope's army before the link-up can be effected. One of the biggest mistakes that academic historians make is the inability to understand fatigue, both physical and mental. Now, this very much applies to the battle here at Cedar Mountain, because think about this from this perspective. Jackson's Valley Army in May marched over 400 miles in the Valley Campaign, fought 5 major battles. Then they go from there and they're transported to Richmond to fight in the 7 Days Campaign. The 7 days, 3 major battles. All 3, 2 of these are some of the bloodiest in American history at the time. Now, we fast forward that. Now they're marching from the conclusion of the 7 days all the way up to Northern Virginia to fight a battle here at Cedar Mountain. Additionally, there is the attrition of war. The high number of casualties is replacing many of Jackson's command with soldiers that are promoted far beyond their depth. Yet in spite of this, Jackson's command is marching with high morale, intent on punishing the newly appointed Union commander John Pope. Pope, even by his own soldiers, is considered a blustering braggart, an odious man that has offended everyone with such quotes as, "I come from the West, where I have seen only the backs of my enemies." Indeed, his proclamation of enacting total war on the civilian population of the South made him one of the most hated characters of the entire war. Jackson warns, "There must be no letting up." Jackson's Valley Army trudges up from Richmond into Northern Virginia, where once again they are given the almost impossible task of facing a numerically superior enemy. Jackson must fix the enemy and exploit possible weaknesses. General Lee is making a calculated military risk, anticipating that McClellan will be withdrawn from the peninsula to join Pope's army, time in which Lee hopes to join Jackson and crush Pope before they can be united. Once again, we have an example of the leadership of Stonewall Jackson. As British military historian G.F. Henderson argues, "In the face of such a numerically superior enemy, practically every general at the time would have simply stopped and waited for reinforcements, and thus given the initiative back to the North. But Jackson is not only taking the initiative, but through maneuver warfare, he will have a numerical advantage at the point of collision." 9 August 1862. The hot August sun was taking its toll on Jackson's troops as they trudged up the Orange Culpeper Road. About 7 miles outside of the vital railroad junction of Culpeper, Union cavalry resistance stiffens. Division Commander Richard Ewell probes ahead with Jubal Early's brigade, and at about 3 p.m. they brush aside the cavalry, but run into Union artillery and supporting infantry. An artillery duel quickly develops. Jackson quickly assesses the terrain and sends Jules' division to secure the key terrain of Cedar Mountain, anchoring Jackson's flank on the right. Jackson's 2nd Division, led by General Charles Winder. Jackson orders Charles Winder's division to shore up his left flank. Jackson, ever the artillerist, quickly gains the upper hand in the duel by placing guns with converging fields of fire. Jackson was in his element. He went through what has been called a transformation, from someone that was often less than inspiring into someone that, as C.S. Gwynne described, as a man that was born for this and only this. An aide tells Jackson, "Don't you think we should move from here?" About that exact moment, an artillery round went so close that it actually killed several horses. To which Jackson then, seeing the danger that he's got his staff in, orders them to the rear, but then turns about and continues his long observation with these words, "They'll hardly aim at a single horseman." Says a lot about who he is. Jackson was not the only one sucked into the vortex of the artillery duel. Charles Winder, leading the 2nd Division to come up, and was charged with securing the woods on the left flank. Winder, instead of following through with his troops' deployment, assisted the artillery battery. Around 4 p.m., Winder was mortally wounded. This placed the division in the inexperienced hands of William Taliaferro. This was made even worse by the fact that Winder had not given Taliaferro any clear instructions as to the task of the division. The timing could not have been more perfect for Union General Nathaniel P. Banks, who ordered 2 divisions forward. Augur's division struck first, advancing on the south side of the Culpeper Road. The attack was checked by Early and Taliaferro's brigade. Yet the real danger loomed in the woods to the north of the Culpeper Road, where responsibility for the critical area had just been vested into someone that had taken command not by days, but minutes. Concealed in the woods, Williams's lead brigade strikes at the absolute perfect time. The blow fell on the freshly arrived brigade of Thomas Garnett, which was hit from both front and flank and quickly routed, as the Union forces set off a chain reaction as regiment by regiment was flanked and sent in wild confusion, running for the rear. The surprise attack was gaining momentum as panic and fear began to spread.
The rattle of musketry, the shouting, the cheering, and yelling were deafening. The smoke of battle and the thick foliage of the timber overhead made it impossible to see but a short distance. The leaves and small limbs were falling thick, and bark from the timber was flying in every direction, often striking a man in the face, leading to him believed he had run against a load of buckshot or something worse. It appeared for a few moments as though we had struck a full-grown tornado, loaded with thunder and lightning. This was the most hair-raising fix I ever struck. Lieutenant John Blue, CSA.
Taliaferro's brigade begins to crumble. The 21st Virginia was almost surrounded, forced to run for their lives. If something does not happen soon, the Federals are on the brink of rupturing all of Jackson's line. What happened next would become the things
There's an old saying,
of legend.
Fear is a reaction, courage is a decision. Now, I'm bringing that out because not only does it apply well to this battlefield, but I want you to understand something. Out of all of human emotions, fear is probably the most contagious out of all. And so what you have here is, in my opinion, one of the greatest examples of battlefield leadership throughout the annals of history. For example, look at this. Look at the situation that's going on. This is not far from where Garnett's brigade is being routed off the field, to where Winder's division is having that chain reaction as Crawford's counterattack is rolling them up. Now, here's the reality. These troops have been beaten. They are routed off the field. They have no reason to stop running. Fear, once started, is almost the hardest to stop. This is the reason why what Jackson is able to do here is so phenomenal from a military leadership standpoint. As he comes riding, remember, when he hears the cacophony of fire erupting from these woods, he's on the furthest right flank of the Confederate line. He immediately sends a message to A.P. Hill telling him to hurry up with the reinforcements, and then rides pell-mell to get over here, jumps over 2 fences. On the course of the ride over, he loses his hat. He then immediately realizes that it's a situation where he's got to rally the troops. He tries to draw a saber. It's rusted in because of all the rainy conditions and the peninsula. So he unbuckles it, lifts it high above his head, somewhere grabs the battle flag of the 21st Virginia and begins to rally his troops with these words. "Rally, brave men, press forward. Your general is with you. Stonewall Jackson is with you. I will lead you. Remember Winder." With this kind of rhetoric, this might seem too much like a movie, but it really happened. And the most phenomenal aspect about it is it actually worked. I would dare say, both North and South at this time, there is probably not a commander with that kind of magnetism, that kind of battlefield leadership to pull this off. Miraculously, these troops stop, turn around, and hold the line. That right in itself, when you think about the human emotion of it, makes it one of the greatest achievements in military history. But the battle isn't over there. As he begins to lead them back into the fight, obviously we have essentially a General Lee to the rear kind of moment here as the troops refuse to allow him to lead them back into the battle. Ultimately, this is what's amazing here, and it's another example of why so many people, both North and South, had such a strong admiration for Jackson. Think about this. He is in the cacophony of fire. This is in the eye of the storm as bullets are coming in from 3 directions. Not only small arms fire, but also artillery fire is being directed at this point. This is how someone on horseback with a flag, with a sword, doesn't get hit, isn't the prime target, is truly phenomenal. But again, it also speaks volumes of the courage that he had, that very few possessed.
In one of the most reckless acts of courage, General Jackson would rally these men and launch a counterattack that would drive the enemy from the battlefield and rip victory out of the jaws of defeat. The reason this event was so harrowing was due to the difficulties that had to be overcome. Indeed, fear is, unequivocally, one of the most contagious reactions that once started, it is almost impossible to stop. To rally beaten and panicked soldiers in the face of a determined enemy attack is a task that even most excellent leaders would not be able to do. Indeed, in both the North or South, few leaders could be found with leadership skills to achieve what Jackson was able to do. Even fewer of such leaders would have had the courage to do what seemed to come natural for the man known as Stonewall. The Stonewall Brigade quickly counterattacked. Jackson ordered the newly arrived division of A.P. Hill to deploy in a wide sweeping arch. Branch's North Carolina Brigade moves to support the Stonewall Brigade, while hard-hitting Dorsey Pender and James Archer push further to Jackson's left flank. The Carolinians went into the battle yelling, "Stonewall Jackson! Stonewall Jackson!" Quickly, the tide was reversed. The rebels gained the flank of Crawford's stalwart brigade and forced them back. The supporting Union brigade of George Gordon was too slow and was caught in a wheat field and devastated by fire from Jackson's counterattack. The South's time had come to roll up the enemy, as Union forces fought desperately to prevent a total rout. The ferocity and savagery of the fighting was indescribable. The undergrowth and limited visibility contributed to this battle being one that many veterans would refer to as the hottest battle they ever witnessed. Jedediah Hotchkiss.
The woods near the gate seethed with projectiles, a horrid fire on nearly 3 sides of us, the balls falling as thick as ever I saw, them reaping their harvest of death on all sides.
Hotchkiss concluded of Jackson.
God must have protected him in this very vortex of destruction.
General William Taliaferro said,
The escape of Jackson from death was miraculous. He was in the thickest of combat at very short range.
Battery Commander Willie Pegram, during the apex of the Union breakthrough, was so moved that he wrapped the battle flag around him, extolling his boys to hold their ground, that Jackson was watching them. Pegram's gunners fought with reckless courage and held their ground. Jackson's presence seemed to inspire both friend and foe alike, as both sides fought with inspiring ferocity. As the tide turned, many Northern troops found themselves flanked and cut off, and were forced to surrender. One such man, while observing the leadership of a hatless leader on horseback, inquired as to who it was. His captive replied, "That's Stonewall Jackson." In one of the sincerest examples of respect, the prisoner yelled out, "Hurrah for General Jackson! Follow your leader, boys," as other prisoners joined in the cheer. What a poetic tribute of respect that even his enemies held a glowing admiration for his military greatness. Darkness brought a close to the battle as Jackson continued to press the enemy further back. However, the heat exhaustion of the march and fighting prevented Jackson's troops from fully exploiting the victory. The North would lose 2,400 men. Jackson would suffer only 1,300 men. The Battle of Cedar Mountain is often overshadowed by the 7 Days Campaign and the subsequent Second Manassas Campaign, and often dismissed as a battle that never should have been fought. Douglas Southall Freedman even goes as far as to blame Jackson for the slow start of his troops in the battle. Additionally, there is the justifiable criticism of Jackson's secretive nature, which played a role in unit execution. These criticisms are not without merit. Yet indeed, how much of this should accurately be placed on the fatigue of the Valley Army? However, it is still a mystery as to why Banks decided to give battle on poor ground that he had already given up the decisive terrain, made even more bewildering by the fact that he is outnumbered and yet gives battle. Yet all these are reasons why Jackson and his subordinates should be exonerated for the surprise attack. Yet the crux of this battle deserves a place in history due to the battlefield leadership of Stonewall Jackson. Simply put, few leaders before or since have ever demonstrated a battlefield presence as he did here. As the old saying goes, men may fight for causes, but they follow leaders. It's leadership, like Jackson at Cedar Mountain, that transcends ordinary people from warriors into legends.